Welcome back to another FPL video. This will be the final edition of the best players in each position. So there are also the best goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders already out on the channel. I would highly encourage you to check those videos out, and also the best budget players. And I talk about more budget forwards in one of those videos. I'm only going to talk about 3 of them here today, and then some new names priced at 6.5 million and above. And at the very end, I'll be providing my own top 5 ranking, as I have been doing in the latest few editions too. If you've got any of your own thoughts, then be sure to let me know down in the comment section below. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new if you ended up enjoying this video. We're going to try to get to 19,000 subscribers first. We're very close to that goal before ultimately reaching the next big goal of 20,000 subscribers. And let's get straight into this video talking about forwards. And once again, I encourage you to leave all your thoughts down in the comment section below. I talked about Wissa already, and I believe he is a pretty decent option, despite the fact that he was reclassified from a midfielder to a forward, and the main concern with him is always going to be the minutes. But if he can get that consistent run of games with Ivan Toney suspended until January, then I think Wissa could be as good value, if not even better, than Mbeumo. But I think what will separate the two of them is the classification. So Mbeumo was a forward, now he's a midfielder, and Wissa is the complete opposite of that. And I think that's the main reason why Mbeumo will probably score more points overall, and also he's a bit more nailed on than Wissa. But there could be the choice of both of them starting at the same time, and Wissa is very good in terms of FPL points per minute. He got 7 goals, 4 assists, 9 big chances, and over 100 FPL points despite not playing that many minutes. So he's always highly impressive when he gets those opportunities, and hopefully there are more starts to come in the upcoming season. I've talked about Carlton Morris plenty of times already in the best differentials video and the best budget forwards, and he deserves that kind of attention. Unfortunately, he does blank in Game Week 2 now. It was supposed to be Burnley, but that game got moved because Luton Town have some works that need to be done in their home stadium. So Carlton Morris has Brighton away, a blank, Chelsea away, and then 2 good fixtures. But I think that blank is enough to put most of us off. But he is 5.5 million, so it's not the end of the world. You could still bench him feasibly in Game Week 2 and then reintroduce him into your team in the following game weeks. He got 20 goals, 7 assists last season in the Championship and started 41 times, coming off the bench on 3 occasions. So he was integral to Luton Town's promotion, and his ownership is only around 3%. He also got 11 yellow cards though, and I have to stress this once again, just be very careful about that. It's something to definitely be conscious about, because he could get the odd suspension, and he also could be out of the bonus points because of those yellow cards that he picks up. But apart from that, I think Morris could be tremendous value for money, and I would argue he is Luton Town's best asset, even over the defender Bell. Even Ferguson has a lot of competition in the forward position at Brighton with Joao Pedro, Undav and Danny Welbeck. I believe Ferguson will be the #1 choice, but with the Europa League coming into action for Brighton this season, that could be a major cause for concern, and it could see a reduced number of minutes in the Premier League, especially if Brighton start to prioritise the Europa League, a bit similar to how West Ham prioritised the Conference League, because they could actually win it feasibly. With the Premier League, of course, that's much less likely. So with Ferguson, I think he'll start quite a few games, especially in the first 3 games of the season. I would expect 2 out of 3 starts, but even that isn't guaranteed, and it's a bit unfortunate because he is 6 million. You could still feasibly rotate him just like with Morris, but I just think the minutes and the rotation will be far too great of a risk. You saw how De Zerbi sometimes rotated some of their best players last season, especially towards the end when they had the FA Cup semi-final as well, and I think that could be a major problem with the Carabao Cup also coming into play very soon. The FA Cup won't be an issue until January, but I'm still a bit concerned about the Europa League and the Carabao Cup and the impact that will have on the Premier League minutes for the likes of Ferguson. But having said all of that, I think once he gets those starts, especially with the first 3 game weeks coming up, if he starts all of those 3 games, he has a great chance of scoring goals. He got 6 goals, 2 assists last season, 8 bonus points, and his ownership is over 13%, and I think he could be a fantastic player this season. He could easily reach 10 plus goals, potentially even 15, but once again, it all depends on those minutes. I hope he gets them. If he does, he could be one of the very best forwards period in FPL. Solanke is a bit of an underrated FPL pick. He doesn't score too many goals. He scored the same amount of Ferguson, despite playing many more minutes. But he also got 10 assists, and some of the stats are fantastic, such as 66 shots in the box. That rivals the likes of Bukayo Saka, who we discussed in the Best Midfielders video. And Solanke got 130 FPL points, the most of any Bournemouth player, and the only player who came close was Billing. So I think Solanke is a good choice here. Unfortunately, the fixtures to start the season are very mixed bag, the likes of Tottenham, Brentford, Chelsea and Liverpool there, and even that West Ham fixture, which is marked as a 2 on the FDR, that isn't going to be the easiest fixture either. But he comes in at 6.5 million. He could once again do a job as your second or third forward, and he is definitely Bournemouth's best asset alongside Billing, so I think he is worth considering. But with those fixtures and some viable alternatives elsewhere at a similar price point, I would probably go in another direction. Awani did just about enough to reach 100 FPL points, and he had a pretty decent season to start things off in the Premier League. So 10 goals, 1 assist, 16 bonus points, and his ownership is just under 2%. The fixtures are very mixed bag. You've got 2 really good fixtures in there against Sheffield United and Burnley at home, but you've got the likes of Arsenal, Man United away, even Chelsea away could be very tough there for Nottingham Forest. But I think Awani is one of the best strikers in the game, especially at 6.5 million and below. But when you take fixtures into account as well, and Nottingham Forest struggling a lot on their travels, and you're facing 3 of the so-called Big Six, then you probably wouldn't expect great things from Nottingham Forest, and even the likes of Awani could struggle as a result. But I think Forest have a lot of potential. If they can get some signings right this summer, they could easily start pushing for a mid-table finish. But there's a fine line. If they don't get that recruitment right, they could also easily get relegated. But I think they've got some quality players in there, in the midfield and forward position in FPL, and we've discussed plenty of them already. I think Awani is right up there. Maybe not Nottingham Forest's best asset. I don't think he'll score the most points for them, but I'm pretty confident he'll be in the top 3 in that regard. A lot of FPL managers are looking towards Phil Foden in the case that Kevin De Bruyne misses the early part of the season, but I'm looking at Alvarez. If you look at the previous campaign, whenever De Bruyne was injured or on the bench, it was mainly Alvarez coming in to fill that position, playing as a sort of second striker / attacking midfielder behind Erling Haaland, and I think Alvarez could be fantastic for the first 4 or 5 game weeks of the season, depending on Kevin De Bruyne's fitness. Alvarez will get plenty of game time anyway. The main issue is starts, especially when everyone at Manchester City is fit, because they have so much quality in all positions, despite losing the likes of Gundogan and potentially losing Riyad Mahrez and Bernardo Silva too. But Alvarez comes in at 6.5 million. If he gets starts, he is going to be absolutely fantastic value for money and a great differential at the same time, coming in at around 2% ownership. He scored 9 times and provided 3 assists last season with 14 bonus points. All very impressive numbers considering reduced minutes and not many starts at all. Towards the very end of the campaign, once Man City secured the Premier League title, Alvarez was starting every single game. But when something was still in play in that competition, Alvarez was mainly on the bench. So that's going to be the main concern. But as I just said, if Kevin De Bruyne misses at least game week 1, I would be expecting Alvarez to start and get a lot of FPL points as well. Jackson had a breakout season at Villarreal last season, and he comes in at 7 million as a new Chelsea player, and his ownership is just under 1%, so he could be a mega differential. Despite not having the best opening fixture, the games afterwards look pretty encouraging. He scored 12 times and got 4 assists in the previous campaign in La Liga, but in his last 8 games he has provided 11 goals plus assists with 9 goals and 2 assists. Really impressive numbers. He even scored over the international break in June, and he's done a very good job. So I think since his last suspension, where I think he got a red card, once he came back, he has shown some terrific form, and that's probably what caught Chelsea's eye, and he could be a great striker for them. Now, a lot of us will be looking at Nkunku and other Chelsea assets, but I think Jackson could be a very underrated pick coming in at 7 million. Let me know your thoughts on him, if maybe you've watched him on a more regular basis. But I think Jackson has a lot of potential. He is still raw, but I think if he hits the ground running with those opening fixtures from Game Week 2 onwards, he could do a terrific job as one of your FPL forwards. This is one of the few prices that I disagree with. I know Mitrovic is a good striker. He's got potential to score 15 plus goals, and he came very close last season if it wasn't for some suspensions. But I think he is a bit overpriced. He should have been 6.5 to 7 million, and at 7.5, I just don't think that many people will go for him. Still, over 6% of managers have gone for Mitrovic, and I think that could increase depending on certain circumstances. And once he came back from that suspension, he had a pretty good end to the season. But speaking of yellow cards and red cards, I think Mitrovic gets far too many of those. I know the red card he got against Man United was a bit of a special circumstance. You don't expect that to happen too many times, but Mitrovic is capable of losing his head, and his aggression is both a pro and a con. It's a weakness and a strength, and he is a good striker. He's going to score goals, get chances. Fulham might struggle a little bit more compared to last season, but you would still expect Mitrovic to be in and amongst the goals. He got 24 big chances in the last campaign, and that easily could have been 30 plus if he didn't get that 8-game suspension. But 14 goals, 2 assists, over 100 FPL points, all very good numbers, but I still think there are much better forwards, even at lower prices you could argue, but especially at 7.5 million and above. Darwin Núñez certainly has a lot of potential, but he is very raw, and there are certain areas in his game we could definitely fine-tune and find that precision, such as his finishing. But the most impressive thing about him is his positioning, his movement, the way he gets into certain positions, and his athleticism. But I'm very concerned about his finishing. He got 28 big chances last season and only 9 goals. Still, if you look at these numbers, 9 goals, 5 assists, decent numbers for someone who's such a young striker coming into the Premier League for the first time and not getting a consistent run of starts. But I still think Núñez is probably worth avoiding for the time being. You've got a lot of competition from the likes of Gakpo, Luis Diaz, Diogo Jota. Salah is the one you'd expect to be quite nailed on in that Liverpool attack, but Darwin Núñez certainly isn't going to be one of those. He is still raw. I think he will improve. He will score more goals in the years to come, but I'm not so sure if he's going to be a reliable FPL asset. The most appealing thing about him, though, is the fact that he comes in at 7.5 million this time, as opposed to around 9 million. In certain game weeks, such as when you're playing your free hit and you get the inclination that Darwin Núñez is going to start, he could be absolutely fantastic. And actually, he was one of the best transfers I made last season. Just before the World Cup, I sold Callum Wilson, I believe it was, who was just coming back from an injury, to Darwin Núñez, and I gained 12 points from that decision. So I think Darwin Núñez could be a good short-term buy in certain game weeks, but I wouldn't recommend him in the medium to long term. I'm a bit more keen on Cody Gakpo. I think he'll get more starts than Darwin Núñez. And you look at the numbers, 7 goals, 3 assists, and 90 FPL points despite joining in January. He almost matched Darwin Núñez's season total. But we have to also put a bit of context. Gakpo was a midfielder last season. He has now been reclassified to a forward, so he might not have that same number of FPL points per minute as he did from January to May, but I think he could be terrific value for money still at 7.5 million as a forward, and he could be a very popular choice, especially in game weeks such as game week 2 against Bournemouth at home. His ownership is around 5% as well. I talked about him in the best differentials video. I would put Gakpo above Darwin Núñez in the pecking order, maybe not by much, and it also depends on pre-season and which players are showing form, because it could be Darwin Núñez easily being the starting striker for Liverpool, but I don't think that'll be the case. You've still got Jota, Gakpo, Diaz knocking on the door, and I think Gakpo will start more games than most in the Liverpool attack. For those of you that play UCL Fantasy, you will probably know Nkunku very well. In the 2021-22 season, he was absolutely fantastic there, and he was one of the highest scoring players in his position. He's now a forward in FPL, and his ownership is around 17%. He comes in at 7.5 million. He scored 16 times and got 4 assists in the Bundesliga in the last campaign. He won the Golden Boot despite being injured for a vast part of that season, and he also only got 20 starts, so very impressive numbers. I know the Bundesliga to the Premier League isn't going to be the easiest transition, and not everyone will make that move very well, but I think Nkunku could start to break this Chelsea striker curse, and he technically won't play as the out-and-out striker. That could be Jackson, and Nkunku could play as one of the inside forwards or just behind the main striker. But Nkunku has a lot of quality. He has a very good goals and assists record. You look at how he's done in the Champions League over the years, 17 goals plus assists, a very decent number, and some fantastic fixtures, especially from game week 3 onwards, and West Ham away isn't the worst in game week 2 either, despite their great form in pre-season. So Nkunku will be one of the most popular strikers slash forwards for a reason, but there are still some other names that we're going to talk about very soon that have higher ownership and are also more Premier League proven. Isak had a very impressive campaign, but you look at some of these numbers like 10 goals and 2 assists, you would have arguably thought he scored more, but he was injured for a vast part of the season. He got 18 bonus points, and I think that's what he has over the likes of Callum Wilson, and Isak is second in command for penalties, with Callum Wilson being number 1, and Isak comes in at 7.5 million, so that price difference could be the deciding factor for you going for Isak over Wilson, and they can both play together, but when that happens, Isak tends to play as the left winger, which certainly isn't ideal, and it's Callum Wilson getting the bulk of the chances. And in Double Game Week 36 last season, as one example, those of us that went for Isak over Callum Wilson suffered greatly, and we might have captained Isak for that double game week, and it was Callum Wilson getting all the goals and points, and that mainly came from the penalties against Leeds United in the first game of that double game week. But I'm looking at those opening fixtures, and even Aston Villa, Brighton and Brentford don't look great, so I'd probably avoid Isak for now. I think the minutes will still be a concern, despite me still believing that he will get more minutes than Callum Wilson in general, because he's less injury prone, and he's also more of a starter. When they're both available, Isak is the one that tends to get the nod over Callum Wilson, but that doesn't make him a better asset overall. Despite being cheaper, anything else you want to say, he's got a lot of potential. He got 100 FPL points last season, but I still think there are better forwards to start Game Week 1 with. Callum Wilson is one of the best forwards in FPL. He got over 150 FPL points last season. 31 big chances is insane for a striker who was 7.5 million last season, and he now comes in at 8 million. His ownership is over 10%. He got 18 goals and 6 assists. Those fixtures are enough to put me off, but I still think he's one of the very best forwards in FPL, and I will just be concerned about his fitness and the amount of injuries they can pick up in a season. But I'd still recommend him maybe in the long term, around game week 6 or 7 onwards. I think for the first 5 game weeks, we could all go without Callum Wilson, Isak, and potentially most Newcastle assets, despite how good they were last season. Whilst Ollie Watkins might not be as clinical as the likes of Callum Wilson and Isak, Watkins is very good in terms of his movement, and one thing you can always, give him credit for is his availability, which is a very underrated part of an asset. The fact that he's always available week in, week out is a big plus. He comes in at 8 million. He's going to start every single game for Aston Villa. He scored 15 times and provided 8 assists with 25 bonus points, and I think that potential he has, especially since Unai Emery came in, is massive, and I would expect him to be in the top 5 highest scoring forwards this season. But it all depends, of course, if he can stay fit, which I believe he will, and he's done that plenty of times in the past. He got 175 FPL points overall in the last campaign, and the fixtures are better than the likes of Newcastle, at least for the first 5 game weeks of the season. So I think Watkins is Aston Villa's best asset overall and one of the very best forwards, period. Gabriel Jesus will be a template pick, maybe not to the same extent as he was last season, when at one point, if we don't forget, he came in at around 80% ownership, and he set the new FPL ownership record before Erling Haaland trumped that in the end. But he got 11 goals, 7 assists, despite being injured for around 3 months. He also got 27 big chances, but his finishing isn't great. I think with Jesus, the main thing he brings to Arsenal is the link-up, his dribbling, the way he can take defenders on and create spaces and chances for others. He's a bit of a hybrid. On his day, he's brilliant, but his finishing can be very frustrating, both for Arsenal fans and those that have him in FPL. He's still got over 120 FPL points. He's got fantastic fixtures, and he'll be very popular for a reason. But I would rather cover Arsenal offensively with Bukayo Saka, Martinelli, and Odegaard. Harry Kane was terrific last season, as he has been for the vast majority of his Premier League career. He comes in at 12.5 million, so he has gone up by 1 million in price, but it's thoroughly deserved. He scored 30 times and got 9 assists, 48 bonus points, which is the most of any player, even more than the likes of Erling Haaland, and he got over 260 FPL points. Only 9 points separate him and the so-called top dog in FPL. So Harry Kane is definitely worth considering, even over the likes of Erling Haaland and Mohamed Salah, and it's a bit of a shame that you can't include 2 or 3 of them in your team at the same time without heavily damaging the rest of your squad. The opening 2 fixtures aren't great, but Harry Kane can score in both of those, even if Spurs end up losing the game, and they actually look pretty impressive against West Ham. They dominated the match, but their defence was the main letdown, and that's why they ended up losing 3-2 in the end. But if Harry Kane stays at Tottenham, he is still going to be one of the very best assets in the game, and whilst he's not going to be a differential, going for him over Erling Haaland is backing against the template, and you're going for a 16% owned player compared to Erling Haaland, who's owned by almost 90% of the game. So I think Harry Kane is definitely worth considering, even over some of the other best assets in the game, because he's always going to be in amongst the goals and the golden boot. Erling Haaland had a dream debut season, all the trophies he won, breaking the Premier League record for most goals scored in a single season, and he still got 9 assists, 59 big chances. I mean, some of these numbers are frightening. Sometimes, on the odd occasion, Erling Haaland's finishing was quite poor, but Man City are a well-oiled machine. They create so many chances, and they finally have that striker who can convert the vast majority of them. The first time since Sergio Aguero, and his ownership is over 85%, which is absolutely ridiculous, despite being the most expensive player of all time, joint with the likes of Robert van Persie, Thierry Henry, and Cristiano Ronaldo in the past. And you look at some of those opening fixtures, they're fantastic. Even those difficult ones like Newcastle at home and, you could argue, West Ham away, Erling Haaland can score easily in every single one of those games. And we're all maybe expecting or, kind of wondering, is he going to reach 40 plus goals and start getting into the Ronaldo Messi territory of getting to 50 goals in a league season? I mean, it's definitely possible with the team behind him and his finishing ability. So Erling Haaland will be the most popular FPL asset by far this season. But despite that, I still think it's worth considering going for Harry Kane over Erling Haaland. I'm not saying it's going to be the best course of action, but only 9 points separate the two. And with a 1.5 million difference in price tag, I think Harry Kane could offer better value for money than Erling Haaland. So we've discussed, I think, 17 forwards in this video today, and it's now time to rank them and give a so-called top 5. So despite everything I've said, I still think Erling Haaland just about pips Harry Kane to the number 1 position, but honestly, the first two are definitely interchangeable, and there's a huge gap between them and the rest of the field. So Erling Haaland will be first, Harry Kane second, and then in third position, I would probably put Ollie Watkins, which sounds a bit surprising, but I think under Unai Emery, who tends to get the best of the strikers, I think he could be a very consistent and reliable option there for Aston Villa. In fourth position, I'd go for Callum Wilson, but maybe not to start the season. This is kind of more of a general long-term thing. And in fifth position, I would go for Gabriel Jesus. And Nkunku was very close to making it, but I think that Premier League proven factor also plays a part. And if Ivan Toney wasn't suspended until January, he would easily be in third position, and then it would be Watkins fourth and Callum Wilson in fifth. But it's a bit of a shame that Ivan Toney is out. Otherwise, he also could have disrupted the template a little bit, and a lot of us would have gone for an Erling Haaland / Harry Kane alongside Ivan Toney and putting more money in the forward line. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you disagree? Maybe you agree, or you have some points that you want to expand on. Let me know down in the comment section for sure. And it's worth noting that the likes of drafthound put Erling Haaland as having a 71% chance of scoring in Game Week 1, which is by far the most of any player. Gabriel Jesus comes in second place, and I think those fixtures for Erling Haaland making the top dog in FPL once again, at least to start the season. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's try to get this video to over 200 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 19,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon, channel memberships, Discord server, and the FPL League. And I'd also highly encourage you to check out the link for drafthound and to consider becoming a pro tier member to gain access to the fixture analysis and many other tools to optimize your FPL teams. I wish you all the best of luck for the upcoming FPL season. Enjoy the summer break, and I'll see you next time.